Welcome to Parenthood Bites, the podcast where we explore life as a parent in tech. I'm your host, Chow, and I have over 15 years of experience in tech, and I'm also currently working as a career coach. I'm the proud mother of 3 incredible boys. In each episode, we have an inspiring guest who will share their remarkable story. You'll find their wisdom and insights both relatable and enriching, because after all, we're all in this parenting journey together. So grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 64 of Parenthood Bites. We're here today with Manish Pandit, who's a senior engineering leader in the Bay Area. Hi Manish, how are you today?
Hey, Chow, I'm doing good. How are you? Of
I'm good. Thanks so much for meeting with me.
course.
I really appreciate it. So how was your new year?
New Year is good. I was in India for the most of December and I got back about a week and a half ago. So getting back into the rhythm of things. Looking forward to 2025.
Awesome. Are you still jet lagged?
A little bit. It's gotten better over the last couple of days. Getting used to it though.
Yeah, for sure. So how many kids do you have and what are their ages?
So we have a daughter. She is 21. She's going to be 22 in April. So a couple more months and then she'll be 22.
Wow, 21. So have you introduced her to alcohol yet?
It did not really need an introduction because she goes to Cal State Chico and she has an apartment with a bunch of roommates. So I trust her. But yeah, I mean, alcohol, I don't think it's been something foreign to her.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
I love that you have that. It sounds like you have that really tight relationship with her.
Absolutely.
And that's really awesome.
Hmm.
I think we should dig into that a little bit too,
Of course.
because as you know, my kids are growing older. And one of the things that are top of my mind is how to continue that close relationship with them.
Absolutely.
So, what brought you to a career in tech?
So, my career in tech was more or less an accident. So, when I had to pick a major for my school, and we are talking about 1993 before, computers and internet became mainstream, I wanted to do either civil or mechanical engineering. And unfortunately, I could not score high enough to get into those fields or those majors. And computer science was pretty new at this college and no one was taking it. So I was like, you know what, let me just go for it. And then maybe I'll just wait a year, prep for the exam, for the engineering entrance exam, do it again. Maybe I can get into civil or mechanical. And as the events turned out, I started to get interest in computer science. And I essentially tried to learn a lot more. And since it was a rapidly evolving field, there was a lot of opportunity. And there was a lot of creative solutions to be built because a lot of things that we take today for granted did not exist back then, but the problems did. So it created a big area of opportunity and creativity. So that's what kind of got me into computer science and computer engineering in general.
So, it was you decided to just go computer science and then you decided to stick to it. And then when you graduated, you just looked for a career over there?
That's correct. Yes.
Cool. So, how many years were you working in tech before you became a parent?
6 years.
So, what was your role at that time?
So I was a senior software engineer, and I was working at a small consulting firm. This is 2003 we are talking about. Yep.
Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
while,
It
right?
has been
It's
a
a
while.
nice trip down memory lane.
It is. Yep. 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 Yeah. I'm dating myself.
So then, if you were consulting, was there even a parental leave at that time? How did that work?
To be honest with you, I did not even realize that there is this concept of parental leave. So I was not aware of it if it did exist back then. Because the thing with consulting is that you are working for a client and essentially you are a single person representing your consulting there. You go there, you're basically, consulting is generally an hourly wage job, right? So you go there and you do your thing and then you come back home. So back then, I did not kind of look into any policies, I was not aware of it. So I was on a conference call when my wife was in labor, and the nurse had to come out and say, like, hey, we need you in there to cut the umbilical cord.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I hung up the call, went and cut the umbilical cord, took a couple of pictures. Back then there were digital cameras like half a
Right.
megapixel. So I took a few pictures and I kind of went back on a call after a couple of hours.
Wow. So you essentially didn't take any time off at all, right? So you were just back to work.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember, very likely it was either a Thursday night or a Friday when she was born. And I got the weekend. And then, yeah, I was back to work on Monday. It's like, come to think of it, in this day and age, when I see kind of like my colleagues who are new parents, I do feel regret that I should have been more aware. I should have been more knowledgeable, I guess, for policies such as medical leave. And I think now obviously it's 22 years too late, but I wish I had known, so I could have spent a lot more quality bonding time with her growing up.
Yeah, but I feel like back then those options weren't as available, right? People didn't talk about it as much. And so, same thing with Mike with the first two.
Hmm.
We had both of the first two kids on a Friday. So
Hmm.
he left work maybe like an hour early, got
Yeah.
to the hospital, and then Monday he was back to work.
Yeah.
In fact, people at work didn't even know he had a baby.
Yeah.
As you know,
Yeah.
people at my work knew because my belly was getting bigger. But for
Yep.
him, because he didn't have the time off and he was just
Yeah.
back to work, it was just like a normal Friday afternoon.
Yeah, definitely. And then for us, since it was a small consulting firm, we were all pretty close, at least in the consulting side. And they arranged a baby shower for my wife. So that was really
Oh,
exciting.
that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have some half a megapixel pictures of that. Yeah.
So, did your wife get time off? Was she working at that time?
She was not working back then.
Okay, so she dedicated her time to the child. You get help.
She did, yeah. There was no help either. So she did not work till my daughter was 5 years old. And then she started doing some kind of part time work in the education sector. And now she has a full time job in a school district.
Gotcha. So, how did you manage? I mean, having a newborn and then going back to work.
Yeah, it was hard. And all credit to my wife, who was 100% 24 by 7 with my daughter. She has seen like every single stage of my daughter growing up compared to me. But to answer your question, yeah, definitely trying to think about how kind of little time I got to spend with my daughter growing up. But, I have had kind of my share of diaper duties. So at least, that is something which I'm really happy about.
But you did. I remember for the listeners, Manish and I worked together at IGN. And I remember when you would bring your daughter in with you to work. And it was
Oh,
always
yeah.
a great
Hmm.
experience. And I saw that and I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Hmm.
She's willing to come, she's enjoying it. And you're taking time out of work day to spend time with her and stuff. And I think that
Hmm.
was always really nice to see.
Oh, yeah. I remember those days. Yep.
Yeah, I remember when I was telling you, I was like, I'm pregnant, my first kid. And you were like, oh, I'm sorry. And that was, I think, when your daughter was 7.
I think so, yeah. 7, yep, 2010, 2009, something like that. Minecraft was very new and she was big into Minecraft. And at
Yes.
IGN, we had a conference room which was themed after Minecraft.
Yes, yes.
So,
And we would play
hmm.
Minecraft. And I remember,
Hmm.
my kids didn't know it when they were younger, but now that they're older, I tell them, I'm like, hey, I was playing it when it was in beta mode. And they're like, geez, you're
Oh,
old.
yeah.
But, I'm sure it was very exciting for your daughter at that time to see you also playing and being involved in that.
Oh, yeah.
It's very cool. So,
Yeah.
how has your work life changed since you became a parent?
So it changed from a point of view of additional responsibility and basically modeling my behaviors so my kid can look up to me. So there were a couple of changes which I did. Basically, I started to prioritize spending more time at home versus going out a lot more. I also made sure that, I'm giving her more, what's the right word I'm looking for? It's like more perspectives even as growing up. So making sure that she knows and she is curious. So paying attention to her personality, her behavior, making sure that I'm giving corrective feedback in a way where it's not like I'm giving feedback to a colleague, but I want to make sure that that feedback actually landed and how it has made her better when I see her in a similar situation next time around.
Got it. So, would you have any tips for other parents if they're trying to do something similar? What is your approach to providing that feedback?
My approach would be to be authentic and not kind of be that overreaching in terms of coaching or teaching the child, because I observe that kids are pretty smart and they observe and absorb from the surroundings and in the environment. So making sure that you are surrounding them with the right things, with the right behaviors that you want to see them growing up with. And it's okay for them to make mistakes. We all do. Obviously, they are kids, they haven't seen the world as much as we have. So, kind of try to see things from their perspective and ask yourself, maybe there is something which I could do differently, or maybe there is something which I could have done or not done to avoid this situation. So, it's not just a learning moment for the kids, but I mean, I have learned a lot raising her, and I have learned a lot about myself, about how I react under certain situations and how I shouldn't have, or how differently I should have.
That's really an interesting perspective. And I feel like for my oldest one, every time he encounters something, it's like a new experience for me because I remember when I encounter it myself, but then seeing him encounter it feels like something
Yeah.
completely different. I feel like I want to jump
Mhm.
in and help. And sometimes I'm like, no, I need to just let him figure it out.
Exactly. You can step back, let them figure it out, and kind of like essentially observing them and kind of telling them that, hey, what if you would have done this instead of that? Kind of add into their curiosity and kind of take them to the path where they always gravitate towards doing the right thing.
Essentially helping guide them, right? Not
Absolutely.
giving them answer, but helping direct them towards the answer.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. You make them think for themselves and just give them that framework by asking the right questions.
That makes sense. So, what would you say has been your biggest struggle or challenge being a parent in tech?
Tech roles get very demanding. So, essentially, for me, one of my biggest challenges has been and continues till this day is that I struggle to disconnect completely. So, even though in theory I say it's like, okay, well, I'm done after this, I'm done after that, but something or the other, and it's not related to the work per se, it's just, how I guess can call it a weakness, maybe, that I tend to be very organized and prepared. So it's Saturday and I'm already thinking about, okay, well, what is my Monday going to look like? How many meetings do I have? How do I prepare myself? And those kind of things. And basically, like, it is this treadmill where it's never going to stop. So even though in theory I know what needs to be done, but that has been the struggle, is to how to adopt that in practice where I can completely disconnect. And I guess it's to do with more with my personality than with tech, but that, to be honest, has been a constant struggle. But I have made some improvements since after she's kind of got to high school and to college, because I remembered back when I was growing up how important that time was for me to spend with my parents, because it's like, you are at your peak teenage and you need the right guidance, the right company, and things like that. So I made sure that, we started to travel a lot more, because I figured like when we travel, it automatically creates a much broader disconnect than staying at home or just staying in the neighborhood. So going to Disneyland and going to Alaska or going to Europe, things like that, it's not so much about the destination, but it's about how you get there. So the conversations on the plane, the conversations as you are exploring these new places, I think carry a lot more value than the place itself.
Right. Just getting out of the normal routine,
Absolutely.
right? Going someplace
Hmm.
different will help disconnect more for both you and your kid.
Yep, absolutely.
So, on the flip side, what would you say has been the biggest benefit being a parent in tech?
One of the benefits I feel being a parent in tech is that we have access to a wide array of benefits. Tech companies are usually on the forefront of making sure that the employees are taken care of really well. And as a part of that, there are some really good benefits out there. There is a lot of flexibility in tech, because a lot of work that we do, we can either do it from home or we can do it while we are mobile. So I believe the flexibility, the perks and benefits stand out as the benefits of being a parent in tech. But I'm happy to see that not just tech, these days a lot of companies are moving in the same direction, which is really great to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I think to touch on what you said, some of the flexibility, while it's
awesome, it also enables us to work more in other
Yeah,
hours too, right? So it's kind of like a
exactly. Yeah.
double-sided thing. So it's like the
Hmm.
flexibility is great, but we just need to set some of our own boundaries, like what you talked about earlier.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's where kind of like the complete disconnect and these kind of things come into picture.
Yeah. So is your approach to completely disconnect to taking trips? Is there other things that you do to help you completely disconnect?
Outside of my daughter, I tend to disconnect by reading books. That helps. So I stopped reading books on Kindle and went back to kind of, doing the paper books. I find them to be really therapeutic also. So it works out, I just go in my backyard with a paper book and that really helps. So that has been pretty awesome. And also I cook a lot. So my daughter, she comes up with great ideas of, how to cook and what to cook. And generally she is kind of like the idea person when it comes to cooking. And I do the execution side of that operation. So it's been great. So I look forward to her visiting home from college because she comes up with great ideas and we experiment a lot with food. So that also has been pretty significant bonding experience lately.
That's awesome. What have you cooked recently that you really enjoyed?
Very recently, I cooked pasta with green beans, apparently, because we wanted to make something weird. So
Oh, was it green?
it was somewhat green, not fully green, but it was good. So we made that. That was just something which we wanted to try out. We make pizza, we make breads from scratch. So we made focaccia, and pizza comes out great always. And because it takes a lot of time, so it gives you more time to talk and to look at things and stuff like that.
That's so neat. I think I have cooked like lasagna and made bread with the
Hmm.
kids all from scratch before, but it's like a large effort.
Hmm.
And I think a lot
Yeah.
of times I just get too lazy and I'm just like, oh, I can't. But
Oh, yeah.
I hear you. It does give you more time to talk to your
Hmm.
kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think Xander wants to have beef Wellington. So I told him maybe we should look into making it.
Yeah.
But that recipe looks very complicated.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, that
I
is
don't
complicated. In fact,
know.
like something as simple as yesterday, I'm trying to remember what I was doing with milk, but it curdled, and my daughter had not seen curdled milk before, so it was her first time in her life to see what curdled milk looks like. And then I told her it's like we can make cheese out of it, and then we went ahead and we got a cheesecloth and we put some weights on it to drain all the water, and we have that fresh made cheese sitting in the fridge. We're gonna make something with it today.
Wow. And you have your fresh bread.
Mm-hmm.
That's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And that's healthier too.
Oh yeah, no preservatives, no additives.
Yeah. So, what would you say is your biggest struggle or challenge with your daughter's current age of 21?
At this age, the law considers her as an adult, and being an adult is very different than being a child. So, one of the things which I worry about is her. And when you make a decision as an adult, it has much broader repercussions than you would as a kid. It has a much bigger blast radius, as we call it in tech. So, my worry is for her to make sure that she is making the right decisions at every stage of her life moving on, be it her personal life or her professional life, because that will be essentially the test of how well we have raised her. So that is something which is always on top of my mind. And we are very transparent in our communications. So she got her driver's license last year. So it's been about a year of her driving. So, it could be things where I worry that, because I remember when I got my driver's license and it was scary driving and I was driving in snow. So it could be like bigger scale worries, like, oh, what's going to happen to her kind of future, like in terms of her career, in terms of her life. And it could be small ones, right? Like she just drove off to meet her friend in Dublin and she knows that I worry and she's like, okay, I'll share my location with you. So that's kind of like the level of transparency and trust I think is crucial. And I'm really happy that she thinks that way.
That's really awesome. It feels like she's very comfortable sharing things
Hmm.
with you, and you're very transparent with her as
Hmm.
well. So, to that point, how has your relationship evolved, since she went to college and things like that?
Now we have kind of our conversations have elevated quite a bit because we talk about careers. And sometimes I look at her for advice, oftentimes. Like if I'm composing an article or something like that, I ask her for feedback on it because she's a writing tutor at her college. She just picked up this part time job, which she really loves. And I noticed that, hey, she has given me really good feedback on some of the things which I write. And that kind of starts off a conversation around different topics, right? Like when she reviews something which I've written, she asks me, obviously, she's like, oh, what does this mean? What does that mean? So that conversation goes in a lot different directions. So having that level of conversation obviously isn't possible when they are growing up. So now sometimes I feel like I'm talking to like a colleague or an intern. So nowadays the conversations are at a very different level than they were when she was a kid. And when she was a kid, our conversations, again, like I said earlier, evolved around coaching her by asking her the right questions and kind of guiding her towards doing the right thing.
That makes sense. So as she gets older, it's more of like a friend, a
Yes.
coworker,
Mhm.
rather than a parent and a child.
Exactly.
That's neat. And you mentioned, talking about careers and stuff. So, have you helped her figure out like what she wants to major in? How did you navigate those conversations?
Yeah, that's a good question. And basically, we did not kind of push her to go in a certain direction. Coming from Indian culture, I'm sure you are aware, it's like, you either become an engineer or doctor or you are disowned. But we made sure, like I made sure that, she gets to choose what she wants to major in. And that's the beauty of, America is that you have options and you have the choice of doing what you think you are interested in. So obviously, I let her know about the consequences, or I wouldn't call consequences, but pretty much the outcomes, where, why certain majors are more relevant to high paying jobs or median jobs, and what the job market would look like 4 years from now, because obviously she's going to graduate after 4 years. Who knows, right? Like things change fast, especially with AI and things like that. We don't know which industry is going to be where it's at 4 years from now. So giving her the right context and then asking her what interests you, what do you like to do. And she picked majoring in human resources because she really likes working with people, understanding people's needs, and I'm like, go for it. I even kind of, connected her to one of the recruiters who I work with at my company. And that recruiter was able to kind of explain her the recruiting side of the world. Then I spoke to one of my HRBPs who also willingly agreed to speak to her about, careers in HR. And that's like, maybe, that's another benefit of working in tech is, folks are very accessible. And it was great where, she got to speak to a recruiter, she got to speak to HRBP, understand what HR is, what are the different things she can do. And that got her even more excited. So I feel like, for me, it was really great for me to see her kind of talking to the HRBP as well as the recruiter, asking the questions around, what are the different areas there. She's very interested in business law and employment law, for example. So she comes to me with case studies, which goes back to that, you asked me about conversations. So now here we are discussing like a case in Supreme Court with a particular outcome, and was it fair or was it not fair. So she's really enjoying it, and I'm happy to see that she is majoring in something which she really likes, and she is really curious about it, and she also has the full context about the field.
That's so cool. I love that you were able to expose her to like real life
Hmm.
situations, people that were taking on those roles in real life. Like that's really, really neat that you did that.
Yeah.
That's something I'm gonna
Hmm.
write down and do when my kids figure out what they want to do. Right
Oh yeah.
now some of them are like, I want to be a YouTuber. I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I don't have a real life YouTuber for them to talk to. But also
uh,
I don't necessarily think that's what they'll want to do in the future. So I know this is something that we're all working through, but I was curious, what do you do to achieve work-life balance and what is your approach there?
So for me, a work-life balance is an interesting concept because I like to see it more like work-life harmony instead of a balance. Because let's be honest, right? Like we cannot shut off at 5 p.m. and just go as much as it makes sense. But usually the nature of majority of jobs, not just tech jobs, it's not that the job forces you to be that, but sometimes there are weeks where there isn't a whole lot to do. And sometimes there are weeks where you're putting in 20-hour days, right? And it goes in what is it called, like peaks and troughs, something like that. So essentially what I focus on is to be available and attentive when I'm needed 100%, and then when I disconnect, I try to disconnect 100%. And that's kind of like how I see a work life balance. And again, I always go back to my books. I also play a lot of Pokemon Go. I've been playing that since July of 2016. I think that's when it came out. And I find that as a good way to get out of the house, check out new places whenever I'm outside and traveling. And it kind of helps me with a lot of disconnect kind of things, because then I focus on Pokemon Go. I really like it. I know like my family laughs at me, but it's like in the companies when we do introductions and then there's this like two truths and a lie. No
Right.
one believes that there hasn't been a single day in the last, I don't know, like what, 8 years almost, that I have missed playing Pokemon Go. I've been hitting that streak for 8 years straight. And that's something which I have been with for 8 years. And there isn't a lot of things which I'm that attached to where I'm connected with them for such a long time.
Right, right. Because people wouldn't think that you play that, right? But it is a
Oh,
really
yeah.
nice way to get exercise, but also
Yeah.
to distract yourself. And fun
Hmm.
fact for the listeners is that you're also Pokemon Go friends with my parents. So I think every day you guys send each other gifts, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And those gifts tell me where your parents are.
Yeah,
Sometimes I get those gifts from Taiwan, sometimes I get them from Hayward, sometimes I get them from Fremont.
yeah. And they'll ask me too. They'll be like, oh, is Manish in India right now? I'm getting some gifts from there. Or, oh, did Manish go on a business trip recently? Because I get it from another location. So
Yep.
it's a really neat way to also just kind of see where people are and where they are in
Hmm.
their lives right now too.
Absolutely.
And so the last question I like to ask is just what's something that you would tell someone who's planning to have kids or something you wish you knew before you became a parent?
Yeah, absolutely. Like having kids is a big responsibility. Everyone knows that, obviously, but you are never really fully prepared for what's to come, right? Like every kid is different, but be aware of the fact that you need to model the behaviors that you want your kid to follow. So this may include, you'll change some of the things. You probably would need to change how you react to situations, because now you have a kid observing you and learning from you. And essentially it does act as a big motivator to be a much better person, not just in public but also in private. So I've noticed, how I have become a much better mentor after becoming a parent, because I can empathize better. I can read much deeper into the situation before reacting to it. So it's like, you should respond, not react. So patience is another thing which you get better at after having kids. Definitely. So I'd say be prepared to make those changes. Some of those changes will happen organically, but if they don't, then intentionally try to change your behavior. That's one. And then, of course, let the kids make smaller mistakes, as we call in tech, right? Let's take measured risks. So be there for them, and then make sure that there is that trust and bonding from the get go, where there is a lot of transparency in the relationship. Your kid should feel confident reaching out to you with the situation that they are dealing with versus going out to some random stranger on the internet. So having that level of trust is really important. And then at the core of everything is communication. Trust just doesn't, form organically. You have to communicate, and having that open dialogue with the kids as they are growing up. I mean, of course, you're not going to talk about, smoking and alcohol to a 3 year old. It's all about situational awareness. It's about, for that particular age, what are some of the challenges that the kid is potentially going to deal with or maybe dealing with, and being open and honest about those conversations with the children.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that because, like I said, my oldest one just joined high school. And so
Hmm.
there's a lot of things in my mind of like, how do I continue
Yeah.
that close
Hmm.
relationship, the communication? And sometimes I try to be very transparent with him. And sometimes I'm like,
Yeah.
am I telling him too much?
Yeah,
But it,
and absolutely, and a part of that is also being vulnerable, because we were all ex kids, obviously, like all of us are, yeah, were kids at some point. So drawing parallels to them, like when I talk to my daughter, I will say like, hey, when I was in high school, here's what I did, so don't do that, so that way they know that, we are not kind of this ivory tower giving or lecturing them, but we are kind of, drawing from our own experiences, and they can see like, yeah, my dad was in high school once upon a time, so we have seen those things. And then, like, again, if we lecture too much, they will just turn off. So we have to strike the right balance between mentoring, lecturing, advising, communicating.
Right. Just enough so that they can absorb it, but not completely shut you out. Because at that point,
Exactly.
nothing goes
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes one of those things where it's like back in our day, and then they just turn off. It's like, yeah, I know what's coming next.
Yeah.
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 Awesome. Well, thank you,
Hmm.
Manish, for taking the
Of
time to
course.
chat with us today and sharing all your wonderful experiences. I know I learned a lot, as I keep
Yeah.
saying, because my kids are slowly getting older and I always come
Yeah.
to you for these
Hmm.
things. So I really appreciate you sharing that
Yeah.
with us. Thank you.
Yeah, no, happy to be a part of this podcast, Chow. You are doing a real noble job by kind of, talking about these things which all parents would like to be aware of and be a part of.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Take
All
care.
right, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Parenthood Bites. We hope you found our episode informative and entertaining. If you're a parent in the tech world or know someone who is, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us at chow@parenthoodbites.co, and we'll be thrilled to add your experiences to our interviews. That's chow, CHIAO, at parenthoodbites.co. And to our potential sponsors out there, if you're a business or know of one that would like to support and partner with our podcast, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can also reach us at chow@parenthoodbites.co. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Until next time, take care and stay curious.